This is the Off-Air Podcast with Rachel Schneider, a show for all the things that don't make it on air. Honest, engaging, in-depth conversations highlighting people making a difference and making waves in their community. Hi, thanks for listening to the Off-Air Podcast with Rachel Schneider. It's me, I'm your host. I'm Rachel. Quick notes and updates about the show. We are now on 7 different platforms for listening. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. However you choose to listen, the show is there. You can't get away from me. I cannot escape myself. I'm always here. But also, I'm happy to report we've got an Instagram page that will be the primary social media account for all things about the podcast at Off Air with Rachel. I thought about keeping up with a Facebook page too, and basically decided that I didn't want to. That's not exactly my target audience anyway, and honestly, it's just hard keeping up with my job being so media-centric and posting about my regular stories all the time and my personal, ways to keep up with friends and family. And yeah, that's not going to happen. So stick with Instagram. But today, I will be sharing this episode through social media and Insta as well. I've been thinking about doing this episode really since Memorial Day, and I hope everybody had that day off to remember their loved ones, to relax, to spend times with friends and family, while remembering the sacrifices our country's military have made to protect us and to serve our nation. So much respect for all of the people in our nation's military. And leading up to Memorial Day, a friend of mine actually posted about suicide awareness for veterans who struggle and are still fighting battles after their deployments, after they come home. And I knew I wanted to do something more to share resources for people experiencing things like post-traumatic stress, things like depression, anxiety, isolation, substance abuse, and just be another beacon and be another way to get out the resources and the message that they are not alone. And there are local heroes helping them discover their purpose in life again, helping them show up as their best self in this world every day. Amanda Held is one of those people. She is the founder of H.O.O.V.E.S, which stands for Healing of Our Veterans Equine Services. It's a safe haven and sanctuary for horses and veterans in Swanton, Ohio. And reading directly from their website, if you're curious, here's a little bit of background of what H.O.O.V.E.S is. It's an opportunity for growth, self-healing, and personal empowerment through connecting with mission, vision, and purpose. A platform that fosters social and networking opportunities, a program that is built on the foundation of philosophy and natural law, and it's a holistic piece of the healing puzzle that will support and enhance other treatment. We just want to be clear here. Amanda was very clear on this. They are not therapists. This is not mental health therapy. It's not a bunch of talk therapy. They're different. And what they also do, a big message that a lot of people take away, is that they are helping veterans transform post-traumatic stress into post-traumatic growth. They're showing people how to live and show up, again, as I said, as their best self is another phrase that they use a lot. And I actually met Amanda when I was working in Toledo, really not too long before I moved. I did a story about H.O.O.V.E.S, and oddly enough, at the time, I had recently met someone who was a veteran and they were struggling, and they ended up going through this program because I sent them the news story and they watched it and they signed up like the next day and they went through the program. So coming full circle here, I just want to say that's one of the reasons I love my job. That's why I do what I do, and those are my favorite types of stories to tell, is stories that can help people. Because if doing one story impacted one person's life for the better because they found out about this resource that was on their local news or, posted online, it's just so worth it. It's so worth any, mean online comments or emails from viewers or fake news flack and runoff from corporate media and political commentators that reflect badly on local news reporters, because at the end of the day, we're just trying to get information out to our neighbors and to people who really need to hear about the programs and resources available to them in their own communities. So again, that's why I do it. At the end of the day, if one person hears about a resource that changes their life, I've done my job by informing the public. And so as fascinated as I was with Amanda Held's work and just seeing the importance of it, a few months back, interviewing her for the first time, I knew I wanted to learn even more about her personal journey, her story, how she started H.O.O.V.E.S, and what it's about. So I hope you enjoy learning about it as well. So without any further introduction, please welcome Amanda Held. So tell me, what has H.O.O.V.E.S been up to in the past few months? Are you guys normally busy in the summer?
Oh my gosh. Yes, it's crazy. It's kind of two different worlds, because in the off season, we're fundraising, we're planning, we're getting stuff geared up. And then April, we kick off our retreat season, and it's really go, go, go. This has been a crazy year. I mean, it's been a crazy year for the world. But we kind of have realized, like, when the world got turned upside down, H.O.O.V.E.S kind of came out on top. We've been so busy. We've gotten, our retreats are already full for the year, which has never happened. So that's super cool.
Oh my gosh.
We've added new initiatives. So we have classes aside from our program retreats. We have some of the veteran alumni have come through, and they have special gifts that they want to share with the world. So we started community classes. So now anyone can come out to the farm and take a class with one of our veteran instructors.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
I know we talked about that a little bit last time when I was there, because it was the pen making and, a couple different classes, or the rage painting, like throwing the paint against the wall. And I'm still, that looks like a time.
Yeah, it is very, very cathartic. So those classes are going really well. We also have some kids classes. We have Mini Monday, where the kids can come out and they do a farm tour. They get to interact with the little animals, but they also get to do a craft, but it's a meaningful craft. So they do 2 of the same craft, and then they keep one, and then they give one to our veterans that come through the retreats as a meaningful gift. So we try to put purpose behind everything that we do out here, which I think, all of our instructors do a really good job at. And then the third thing that's going on is H.O.O.V.E.S is hitting the road. So I'm actually flying out tomorrow morning to facilitate a retreat in Kansas.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're expanding that way. And then in July, we'll be in Montana.
So before all this expansion and community classes, let's go back to the start of this too, for people who don't know who you are, who don't know what H.O.O.V.E.S is. Tell us a little bit about you. I mean, how did you get started with this? What was your journey like? Because you were in the Air Force before all this happened, right?
I really feel like the more I get into this, I feel like this was my destiny, and I just had to go through a bunch of trials and tribulations to get equipped for now the rest of my life. But I struggled pretty deeply with social anxiety and depression as a child. I joined the military right out of high school because I just felt like I wanted to get out. I didn't really feel like I had purpose. And so that really filled a big void for me. But then I found myself in 2003 ending my military career, or getting out, because my enlistment was up and I had 2 kids at the time. And it was really just, it made more sense for me to stay home than to stay in and pay daycare. So I had a massive loss of purpose, which really sent me into a spiral. And I just got to a point where I didn't want to be alive anymore. And I didn't really understand that, because on paper, it looked like I had a great life. And then it's like, I have all these things to be grateful for, but, I didn't have purpose at the time. So I ended up, just through divine happenstance, acquiring a baby wild Mustang. And that's a whole nother long story. But the point of that is this horse saved my life. I started to learn about communication, emotional regulation. And it wasn't in a way at the time that I understood, but I was really being prepped for the work that I do now, just simply by training this horse, because the horse was wild. It was a young horse that had been taken from its mother. So if I was not emotionally right, that horse didn't want anything to do with me. So every day I got to practice showing up in a way that I was in control of my emotions instead of just, being a mess. And what I've learned now is what I was actually doing is reprogramming my brain and reprogramming my ability to have control or governance over my nervous system. So at the time, I just thought I was training a horse, but I was learning all these things that were underlying. And it actually gave me the confidence and the power to change my whole life.
And what type of power, like empathic powers, do horses have? I know you've talked about this a little bit with me before, but you said showing up and they can kind of sense how you're feeling, or what have you uncovered like in your years working with the H.O.O.V.E.S organization, or even before that? Like, is this like a science that people have seen in like in horses, like their brains or something, that they can pick up on those things?
Yeah. So two parts to that question. There is science behind it. I also have new discoveries. So the science behind this is everybody has what are called mirror neurons. And so that's the way we non-verbally communicate with each other. And I describe it as if, let's say you're in a room and somebody walks in and the energy of the whole room changes. And that could be for the better or for the worse, depending on what that energy is. But we're constantly scanning our world around us and making adjustments energetically to the influences in the room. Horses can do that at a magnified level. So they're hypersensitive. So they're so sensitive, all of their senses, they can actually hear you put on a pot of coffee in the house in the morning from the pasture. So that's how sensitive they are. So that paired with their non-predatory herd animals. So what that means is they're prey and they live in a herd. And so what they have to do is they mimic the behaviors of the horses around them, because if you are in the wild and you stand out, you're the one that gets targeted by the wolf. Mm. So those two things together make horses really powerful. People ask me a lot, well, why don't you just use dogs, or what's the difference? So that's the difference, is that they're herd animals. And so when you put a group of people in an arena with a group of horses, they innately start to mirror or mimic what's going on with that horse. So if you step into that arena with that horse and you're anxious, the horse is then going to become anxious. If you step in and you're disengaged and shut down, the horse will then be disengaged and shut down. And if you're suppressing anything, so what we say here is that the horses will actually express the things that we repress to the same degree. So if you're really repressing anger, then the horse might start, running around and throwing its head up. If you're really trying to repress your anxiety, the horse might not even want to come near you. So it is very scientific and very deep. These are deep topics that sometimes I struggle to simplify for people who have never been exposed. And, we tell people all the time, you really have to experience it to fully understand it. But to put a story behind that, we had a guy come out, Army veteran, and he came out because he was having some relationship problems. So we put him in the round pen with the horse, and we just said, get this horse to connect with you and follow you and want to be with you. And so the horse, upon him entering that arena, the horse turned around and just put her butt to him, would not acknowledge his presence. And I'm like, ooh, okay.
Not the best first date.
No. So he tries some tactics. He tries to love on the horse, and then he tries to push the horse. And, we use one of our draft horses. This is a 2,500-pound horse. You're not making this horse do anything it doesn't want to do. So he's kind of pushing on her shoulder, and she's pushing back with equal force. And, so he gets to this point of frustration, which I find really becomes the point of vulnerability, where people it's like the slap in the face, right? So he starts this dialogue of I'm just trying to connect with you. I'm just trying to make this situation better for both of us. I'm trying to do all this and that for you. And you just won't even look at me. You won't cooperate with me. And this is really frustrating, right? So we have this moment of vulnerability, and then comes what we call the aha moment. So then he stops, and you can see the physiological change on his face. And he's like, oh my gosh, this is what I do to my wife. This is exactly what that horse is doing to me, is what I'm doing to my wife. And this really sucks. And I've never had that awareness of how she's feeling, because I've been so in my shit,
right,
that I don't realize how I'm impacting everybody else. So that's really the practical application of this. And, sometimes we just call it magic because it is magical. but however you treat people is how that horse is going to treat you when you step into that arena.
That's so eye-opening. So you went through this experience yourself with the horse that saved your life. And then when was the moment for you when you thought, okay, wait, more people have to know about this? Like, when did you start getting the gears in motion to know that you wanted to found an organization like H.O.O.V.E.S that would work with other veterans who are experiencing a lot of the same demons that you were?
Yeah. So there's a couple of definitive moments. To make a really long story short, so through working with this horse, I actually ended up making some decisions to leave my marriage, to leave where I was at, to just make some dramatic changes in my life based on what I wanted for my life. And I came back to Ohio from Colorado with my horse and my kids, of course. And yes, gotta have those. And I went to college for business. And while I was in college, I made this business plan on having a horse training business because at the time, again, I knew none of the things I know now. I'm just a horse trainer. At that point, these amazing trainers taught me all this amazing stuff in Colorado. So I'm bringing it back to Ohio and I'm just a horse trainer. And I ended up finding a barn to buy, and I went into business with my dad and we launched a boarding and training facility. So I think, again, this whole time that I'm just training the horses, but then I started getting clients who were in situations like I was, or maybe they didn't have horses growing up, but now they have wealth and they're like high-powered women executives. So they go and they bring their childhood dream to fruition, but then they get in front of this horse and this horse is reading all the things that they're repressing and trying to hide, right? And responding accordingly. So they get these well-trained, expensive horses and the horses just start exploding on them. So I am just kind of showing them how to control their emotions so that the horse calms down. And then they're coming back to me going, I'm managing my employees better. I'm managing my marriage better. I'm managing my children better. So I just started to see this patterning. So I'm like, cool, I'm this horse trainer and this is kind of my niche is problem horses. So people are bringing me all these problem horses and I'm not understanding the reflection component. And at the time my career goals were to be in the show world, to be training, but there was just something missing. Like it wasn't fulfilling my heart. And I was going to some horse shows and I wasn't agreeing with the way the horses were being handled. And it just wasn't for me. So I decided to just shut everything down. And I said, this isn't what I want to do with my life. And, everybody's like, you're crazy. You have a full barn. You have a full training schedule. And I'm like, I know, but I'm incongruent. I just can't do it. So I quit everything. And within a couple of days, I got a phone call to go to a Mustang auction. I used to go for the BLM, and I would teach people when you get your wild horse home, here's kind of the things you want to do with it. So I got this random call from a guy and he was like, hey, I heard you're going to be at this auction. Can you grab this horse for me? I want it. Somebody didn't take it. And I'm like, sure. I have the trailer. I grabbed the horse for this guy and he comes to the farm. And then he starts talking to me about this equine assisted psychotherapy. And I'm like, what is that? And he's like, well, they don't ride the horses, but the horses actually reflect the problems in their life. And I was like, it was like the stars aligned. And I knew that was like the definitive moment that I had to do this for the rest of my life. So that's really when I started learning about the reflective component. So I went right away to the organization that he was from, and I got my certification. And I opened my doors in 2011 as a nonprofit. And that was just for everybody. And I was so naive at the time. I thought, well, I'll just put out a press release and people will just start flooding my business. Well, that doesn't happen. That's not a thing.
At that time, was it called H.O.O.V.E.S? Like, had you?
Nope. It was called Riverbend Equine Therapy,
okay.
Which is funny because we don't actually do therapy now. We do coaching. We don't do any therapy. But at the time, those were the only words I had for what I was experiencing. But what happened from there was I was working out at the 180th Fighter Wing at the time. I had later on joined the Guard, and I was seeing these pilots go, I would know them and I was working with them. And then they would go and they would deploy and they would come back and they were just not the same. And that's just the pilots, a lot of the people would go and then they would come back and their marriages would fall apart. They would start drinking more heavily. So I realized the need at that point. So that's when I started the H.O.O.V.E.S program, which was just under the umbrella of Riverbend Equine Therapy.
Okay.
So it was just a program, and it started out just working with people one-on-one. And I didn't even think my first session was a success because we had to trick the guy to come out. We just had to tell him we're like, we're filming for this commercial, and we just need someone to do these exercises, but you don't even have to talk, you don't even have to say a word. And so he was like, oh, well, I can help you out. Cause veterans always want to help people. They don't necessarily want to deal with their own stuff. So he came out and he did the session. We didn't talk. I didn't ask him anything. And then he left. And, then I tried to run this business. It was hard. 6 months in, I was like, I can't do this. It's too tough. So I was going to shut everything down. And he heard that and called his mom, who was helping me at the time. And he said, you have to tell her she can never stop. Like, this saved my life. It's the only thing that worked for me. Please don't let her quit. And I was like, okay, I can never quit. This is my destiny, no matter how hard things get. And they did get very hard. I've had that kind of beacon to keep me going, and this was, oh my gosh, 11 years ago. And now this veteran has gone on. He became a social worker. He's now helping other veterans. So that was the first moment for me where I was like, I can never not do this. We didn't even talk, and he got healing from that. All he did was go through these exercises. So, that was really the moment for me that forged my future, my destiny.
And what a sign too, just at the right moment, you get that phone call, like when you're right about to, you're at the end of the road again, and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to quit. And then you get that sign. And that's truly I think that's those little miracles in life that when you see those things happen. And so now fast forward, it's 2021. And you guys do, you like you said, you're booked with retreats for the rest of the year. I mean, tell us, when you go into designing this curriculum, how long are the retreats? How many people get to come? When you were designing this new business plan, I guess, sort of for your nonprofit for H.O.O.V.E.S, what did that look like? And what does H.O.O.V.E.S stand for too? So
yeah.
Don't know.
So H.O.O.V.E.S stands for Healing of Our Veterans Equine Services. In the military, we use a lot of acronyms. So I felt like it was appropriate to stick with that line of naming. So that we did, it took us a couple weeks to come up with that, just kind of playing around with words. But once we got it, we're like, that's it. Yes, H.O.O.V.E.S. So it's been a really evolutionary process. Again, like I said, I started just helping people one-on-one. I had never entertained the idea of doing groups before. But I feel like a lot of my path has been forged directly from challenge. So while I was at the farm that I was running with my dad, I was just seeing people one-on-one. In 2013, my dad passed away unexpectedly, and I had to sell the farm and basically get rid of everything. The only thing I kept were 6 of my horses. And so from that challenge, I had to go on. I wasn't working at the farm anymore. I didn't have income from it. So I had to work 2 jobs. Plus I was in school, and then I had to board my horses. Plus I was a single mom with the 2 kids at the time. So it was really I still want to help people with my horses, but the only way I don't have time to do one-on-ones anymore. Yeah. So if I'm going to help people, it's got to be in a group. So I started doing a weekly, Wednesday nights from 6 to 8 o'clock, and I'd have people come in and show up, but there wasn't any consistency in it. And these exercises and the curriculum that I've designed is meant for each one to build on the other one. So it was, again, it was helpful. It was good. Everybody liked it, but it wasn't as impactful as I felt it needed to be. So, I ended up meeting my now husband in 2014, and we were just kind of talking about things and how I can help people and maximize my time and their impact. And we came up with the idea to run a 1-day workshop. So we would do all the exercises. At the time, I only had 6. Now I've developed 12, but at the time I just had my 6 little exercises, and we said, let's just do them in 1 8-hour day. And so we did that.
And what were some of those exercises? Like, what are some of the things that you typically would go through like in a day?
Yeah. So we always start out by having people observe the horses. So we don't let them interact with the horses at all. And you have to watch the behaviors of the horses as they interact as a herd. And what happens is what's actually happening is the horses are reading the people watching them, and they start to play out again the behaviors, right? So we ask the participants, like, what do you see? And they make judgments on these horses. Like, well, that horse is a weak one, or that horse is the leader, or that horse is friendly, or that horse is a bitch. That's always a bitch horse. It's great.
There's always one.
Yeah, there's always one. And then we have to talk about where that shows up in the group, and that's always really fun too. But deep self-awareness and what is a bitch really. And I love, we just did a women's retreat a couple weeks ago, and that was one that came up. There was a horse in the group, and we were asking them to observe, and one of the other horses kept trying to get close to it, and she didn't want the other horse in her space. So she was squealing and kicking, and she would chase the horse out, but she wasn't harassing the horse. She wasn't chasing the horse. She was just moving it away from her and letting the other horse know what she wanted, and they labeled that horse a bitch. And I'm like, okay, cool. Then we go in and we meet the horses and we interact with them. And when they all went in the arena, that horse was the friendliest horse. She was nuzzling them, and she was like, letting them scratch her, and she was really engaged. And they're like, well, this horse isn't a bitch at all. And I'm like, let's look into that. So let's really look at what was happening there. And, they came to the conclusion that she was setting boundaries, and the other horses weren't respecting the boundary. And then everyone thought she was a bitch. And then we got to talk about, especially as women, it's like, if you're not compliant and nice and friendly, get labeled, right? Yep. Mm-hmm. But do any of us really intend to be that way? No, we just get our boundaries crossed. And so how can we, first of all, not judge other women if we perceive that they're being bitchy, and to know, like, what's really behind that? Where are they being imposed on, and how can we help them? Or if it's us, how can we know that it doesn't matter if people perceive us that way? We're just trying to get our needs met or hold our boundaries, right? So all very, very metaphoric. So that we always start with that one because it's so powerful, and we have to let people know that our perception is what drives our entire life and our happiness and the decisions we make and the judgments that we make. So and the other component to that as well is, kind of like I said earlier in our conversation, how is the way that you're showing up impacting the group or the room? And so there was another participant that was talking about how nobody likes her, and every time she goes somewhere, she's the odd one out. And, when she went in, the horses didn't want anything to do with her. And then we started talking about our personal energy and how we show up in the world. And she made a shift. And when she shifted to leave those beliefs behind, to believe that she was worthy and she was likable, this one horse magnetized to her. She would walk all over, it wouldn't leave her alone. So, again, just loads of self-awareness, loads and loads of self-awareness. So
that's how you make friends with people and with horses.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the horses, their social hierarchy is so similar to humans that it just does an amazing job of, really uncovering our unconscious bias and then affirming when we're showing up in an effective way versus an ineffective way. So the feedback that you get is instant. It's immediate feedback. And it's unbiased feedback because, horses, they don't judge. They don't care what you have or haven't done. They don't care how much money you have or what you don't have. They don't care about your social status. They care about who are you showing up as a human being, and are you authentic? so you can, because we always think that we can't show emotion, right? Oh, well, if I show up somewhere and I'm sad, people aren't going to want to be around me. But that's not actually true. People don't want to be around you when you're repressing your sadness. But, you know, in the horses, if you're repressing your sadness, they don't want to be around you. But there's been plenty of times that I've just stood right in the center of the field and bawled my eyes out, and they surround you, because horses are drawn to authenticity. And so it really helps people understand that the way that you're trying to not show up in the world is actually the poison that's doing the damage, instead of you just being how you feel, being authentic. You know, you can be angry and be authentic, and people will still be drawn to you because you're being real. And at the end of the day, that's what we really want. We want to be able to be real, and we want other people to be real with us. So loads of lessons in just that one 1 hour exercise.
Well, and how is that exercise too, or just like the way you show up? Because when I've talked to other H.O.O.V.E.S alumni, they use that phrase a lot too. They say the way I show up in the world and my purpose, and it's very purposeful in the way that they talk about their experiences. And when you talk about that exercise, I mean, how can that be such a pivotal moment for the veterans you work with? I understand you now work with first responders as well. You know, seeing that moment in person, like, why can it be so important for somebody who deals with a job that may have a lot of stress, or maybe they're struggling with post-traumatic stress themselves, or depression, anxiety, things like that?
Yeah, it's life-changing, because even just that exercise, you know, and I think I get a lot of people that are like, oh, it's so nice you let the veterans come out and pet and brush the horses, and that's very therapeutic. And it's like, oh no, it's so much more than that. But you know, it's that awareness. One of my favorite quotes is, our awareness once expanded can never return to its original form. And so many of us are so blind to how we show up and how we impact other people that we're around. And it's not because we're bad people, or that we're malicious, or even that we're selfish. It's just that we're unaware. So a big part of these retreats is waking people up, again, to how they're showing up in the world. And because when you're aware, then you can do something about it. But if you're not aware of what you're doing or how you're showing up there, you can't possibly fix that. But, you know, a lot of the interaction and the feedback that we get in our relationships is derived from our belief system. And so the horses really quickly uncover our bullshit beliefs. Mm-hmm. And the things that are not true. But when we believe things, and one of the things I teach in the course is that our brain is like a supercomputer, and it's full of these beliefs that we were programmed with basically before the age of 12. So at the age of 12, our brain actually changes, brain waves change. And so where we're absorbing as children, once we hit around the age of 12, then our brain's job is just to find all the synchronicities to our beliefs. So we're constantly scanning the world. And it's like, if it resonates with our belief, maybe our belief is I'm not good enough. So our brain, because our brain doesn't know good or bad, it just knows cause and effect. Mm-hmm. So if we believe we're not good enough, we're gathering all this data of every time we perceived ourselves as not being good enough. Even if we're like a triathlete, or we've, you know, saved a kitten from a tree, or, you know, we're saving with the first responders, they're saving people's lives every day. But if they don't believe they're good enough, then their brain isn't going to store any of that data consciously, and their brain can't access any of that. It's only the times of failure. So one of our big goals here is to flip people's belief. And the only way to do that is to find hard evidence. Our brain has to have hard evidence to change a belief. And that's why, you know, I won't get in the positive affirmations discussion with you, but we can look in the mirror every day and say, I love myself, I'm good enough. And then our subconscious is like, no, but your belief that you've programmed me with doesn't compute. So I'm going to discard that information. And then I'm going to give you 5 memories of the time that you suck. Oh. That's just how the brain works. And so to create this change, and why this program, because people say all the time, can you really change someone's life in 4 days? Like, we can change someone's life in an hour through one of these exercises. I mean, obviously more impactfully through the 4-day retreat, but you have to provide your brain with hard evidence to change a belief. And so we we look at the beliefs, and then we look at a time in their life where they've done the opposite. And then once they tap into that memory and really bring that up within their bodies, the horses change. They change instantly. And then they can see, wait a minute, it's been me all along. I have been creating this environment that I'm not happy with. And if I can show up differently and I can access these memories and I can hold that emotion within my body and I can see the reflection of the horse, it's an instant change in your brain. And so that's really what makes this program so powerful.
And that makes so much sense. Like you said, you kind of have to see it to believe it, something physically there that you can see, okay, this is the issue, that it's been me, like this is what I need to work on.
Yeah. And so interesting, that's actually to kind of come full circle on your last question. So we started the 1-day workshops. Mm-hmm. Those were the most powerful thing I had ever seen at the time.
Yeah.
Then we were just holding them monthly because again, I have all these other things going on and we're holding these monthly workshops. And then eventually one of the guys comes to me and he's like, Amanda, like I can't go to work on Mondays after I come here, because they were always on Sundays, because my mind is blown that I could change so dramatically in one day. And every time I come here, I change dramatically. And I was like, wow, thank you for that feedback. I'm always asking for that feedback. I think it might be socially irresponsible to bring someone out for a day and send them home. So that's where the retreat, I'm like, I really need these people to be with me to have this. I mean, I didn't know it was going to be so profound. I never imagined this would be the result of me, in that little Mustang 15 years ago. But that's when we decided, that we had to take people out of their environment for multiple days and give them the time and space to process the profound and dramatic changes they were experiencing in one day. Right. So we started with the 3-day retreat, and we ran that for 3 years. And I tell people that come through, like, if I'm teaching you the same thing now that I'm teaching you in 6 months, I'm not doing a good job. So I'm still constantly learning, growing, changing, evolving. And so the retreats are kind of just the mirror of my personal evolution. And in my last retreat of 2020 in October, it was a women's retreat, and they were, it was getting to the point where we had added so many things. They were like, Amanda, this is too much in 3 days. Like they were like, we really need to make this retreat 5 days. And I was like, well, that's a stretch, but let's compromise and go to 4. Mm-hmm. So now this year it became from a 3-day retreat to a 4-day retreat. So now it's 4 days because we've added pen making, we've added rage painting. We've added different classes, breath work, meditation, yoga. So we're adding all of these things. And then, of course, I'm learning more powerful trauma healing tools. So, we've already maximized our time at the 4 days. And I think what's on the horizon for next year is actually a level 2 retreat. So you get the basics in level 1, you can go implement, work with that, make the changes in your life. And then if you want more and you want to go deeper, you'll be able to come back for level 2.
Right. And I see that now, as we'd mentioned, I know we did a story with you, I want to say earlier on in 2021, when you started bringing on first responders as well. But before that, you'd worked with veterans, and then you had the women's retreat, so you have the different groups as well. How many people usually get to come to a retreat? Like, I know you guys are a nonprofit, so is this like affordable for people to go to? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So our services are always provided at no cost to the veterans and first responders. The one barrier that I see in so many veterans being able to seek help is finances, funding. Yep. If you have PTSD and depression and you're battling alcoholism and you're isolated, you're probably not doing great financially. Mm-hmm. And, because we didn't go down the therapy route, we don't have the ability to bill insurance. So that's not the type of program that we are. And to me, it was worth it. I don't regret that decision, because we also get people that are still serving. And one of the other barriers is in seeking treatment is fear of losing your career. So a lot of people weren't coming when they thought it was therapy because they thought that would, damage their career.
How would it damage it? Like if other people found out, or like, how does that?
Yeah. So I will commend the military because they have really come a long way in allowing active duty members to seek treatment. But, 5-10 years ago, if you saw any mental health treatment, you would be placed in a non-deployable status immediately. And if you can't deploy, then you get medical boarded and you exit. Now, and you couldn't be on any medications. You really couldn't be in treatment for anything. Yeah. So, but they have really, come leaps and bounds. None of that is true anymore. Or at least, to a certain point, but people still have that fear of like, well, if I let them know that I'm not feeling okay, then I won't be deployable, then I'll lose my career. So, we have made this a coaching and a training and a teaching program, which it truly is, and I tell people all the time, the first thing we tell people when they get here is, this is not therapy. I'm not a therapist. I don't want to be a therapist. That has its time and its place. We work really, really well with people doing other things. So this program is meant to be supplemental and complementary to any of the other things that you're already doing. But we're teaching, we're not providing therapy. But that has, put a financial barrier on our program because they're not paying for it, but we still have a lot of expenses. So somebody has to pay for it.
Right. Because for these retreats, they're staying overnight, and now it's up to 4 days. And you guys just seeing the pictures online and stuff. Your place, it's a beautiful farm where you have the horses. Cause I've been there obviously for your newer events and stuff, but talk a little bit about then how you were able to get started when the retreats became longer. Like, how do you navigate that too with the finances and working that out as a nonprofit?
Yeah, that's been, again, we're unconventional in every way, even to the way that we raise funds. But really, it's been the community. Our community has been unbelievable. And so we are not grant funded. We've never received a sizable grant. We are privately funded, and we've had so many companies give us sizable gifts this year that it's just been unbelievable. We received a gift from the Lucas County Veterans Service Commission. They love what we're doing. Betco is a company. Oh my gosh, they make different types of chemicals, but they make hand sanitizer and things that helped with COVID. So they had an influx of business this year. So they had extra money. So they sponsored a whole retreat for $20,000. There's another business called Dewey-Soft, and one of their employees was helped by H.O.O.V.E.S, and they came back and gave $20,000 and they sponsored a whole retreat. So it costs us, for a local veteran, $2,000 to attend our 4-day retreat. That's with, the materials, the food, all the different providers that come in, the horse care and the lodging. So we've had multiple companies just step forward and say, hey, I'm going to pay for a retreat for 10 veterans. So we take 10 at a time. That's, I feel like, what I can handle comfortably. And
does that group interaction help as well during that? Like, what's the impact like when it's one-on-one versus when they have that group? Is it a little bit more of a community feel?
Absolutely. And I don't do one-on-one anymore unless it's an extreme situation until people have been through the retreat, because you can't, and I'm very big on, like, my motto is take no credit, take no blame. So, I don't bring people in here and allow them to think that I'm some guru that is doing something that they can't do and that I don't have all the answers, but there's, 10 other people in this group, and maybe somebody has a recommendation. Maybe they've been through what you're going through. I'm not a combat veteran. So, I did have a diagnosis of PTSD. I have deployed, but my trauma came from childhood. It didn't come from being at war. So I don't know what that's like, but, I have Tim, who was a sergeant major, who has 3 or 4 deployments, who has been in combat, who has seen all the things. And now he's learned these tools and, he's coming alongside of me. Or I have Tristan, who was a Navy corpsman, and he's deployed. And, so and it's funny because they're 2 of kind of my next in line to start facilitating. They're learning the program right now so that they can run retreats as well. And both of them were very disgruntled when they got here. They didn't overly want to be here, and were mainly here because their significant others highly encouraged it. But it was actually the group component, especially for Tim. I just did an interview that I published with him on YouTube a couple of days ago, where he talks about how he is a sergeant major, which is the highest ranking enlisted person in the Army. And he was like, I'm a sergeant major. I help people. I don't talk about my own problems. And then he was like planning on sneaking out, I guess, the first night that he was here. And we do introductions, and we went around the circle just asking people. We pick horse cards. So we have all these cards with horses doing different things, and they pick one card that represents where they're at in their life now, and then one card that represents where they'd like to be. So we go around, and he talks about how he's like, don't want to talk about these stupid cards. But then he had this like moment of vulnerability, right? Where he just decided, like, screw it. I don't know these people. I'm never going to see them again. I'm leaving tonight anyway. I think I'm just going to go ahead and be radically honest. And he was. And he had no idea how much that was going to do for the rest of the group, because, a couple of people had went, he didn't go first, and, just basic answers, which is fine. Sometimes people don't want to talk, and that's totally fine. And after he went, and he sobbed, he cried, and he just exposed everything he was feeling. He got vulnerable. Right. And then he let it all out. And, that was even just that, without any of the horses and the tools, like, that is incredibly healing, just to take that breath as your authentic self for the first time, maybe in your life. And so one of the guys that had previously went was like, all right, I need to go again, and I need to be honest, and then they all went again. Right. So it wasn't me in that moment that created change. It was Tim. And it impacted everyone else in the group, because they're like, okay, well, if the sergeant major can be honest about how they feel, right, and honest about their struggles, then I can be honest too. And, and now, of course, he's a major advocate for the program. And he just told his story. We filmed it last week and produced that the other day for the first time publicly, because now he's like, that changed my whole life. And I want to let everybody, I want the whole world to know that it's okay. And it doesn't matter who you are or who you aren't. It's okay to feel challenge and struggle. So the group aspect, in my opinion, is pivotal. And then they have a support system moving forward. You would not believe how many people show up here that are just socially isolated. And, after they leave, we create a WhatsApp group that they can all communicate in, and they do, and they stay connected. And then when they're struggling, cool. So we actually have statistically a 99% reduction in isolation from pre to post retreat. And I believe it's the community that we've created. And, nobody's above or below. We're all just here to support and hold accountable everybody in the group.
That's fantastic. So since opening your doors, how many veterans and first responders and people in need have come through and gone through your program?
So we're pushing about 400 people that have been through the program in some form or another, but our goal right now is 100 a year. So we are on point to hit that this year. And like I said, we are full for the year, which is not my goal, because you never know when someone's gonna have an emergency and not be able to wait. So, we do hold a couple of standby slots, and, if somebody is really struggling that bad and I need to throw 11 people into the retreat, we'll do that. But we're already once I get back from Kansas next week, I'm facilitating there, coming back, doing a retreat here. We're actually going to have to roll out our 2022 dates and start filling those, which is unbelievable. I just never imagined we'd get to this point.
Oh my gosh. Right. And then, so the sense of community after the 99% reduction in isolation, what are some of the other outcomes? I know you mentioned many people could struggle with substance abuse or other things. Like, what is the impact after having gone through a group session and for things like that?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I have to when I got the data because we use a self-report survey, but it's a pre and a post. And the first time I calculated the surveys, I had to go back and do it like 3 times because I didn't believe what I was seeing. And so right now, 83% of the veterans that come through the program report the complete elimination of suicidal thoughts. And that is mind-blowing to me. Like, I'm still wrapping my head around that, but I know why. It's because we teach people that they don't have to be victims of their history. They can be masters of their destiny. We connect them to a purpose. So we basically give them a playbook or a roadmap on how to live a life of fulfillment. And it completely eliminates suicidal thoughts. And we have a 40% reduction in substance abuse right now. So using substances to cope. I was just one of the alumni from the September retreat of last year. He calls me once a month to check in, and he used a lot of alcohol and marijuana to cope prior to the retreat. And he's every month when he calls to check in, he says, I still haven't touched anything and I don't even want to. And that was something that happened in one day, in one moment. He had one moment in the arena with the horses that changed his perception and totally eliminated his addiction to substances in one moment.
That's fantastic. And I know that there's other programs out there. And there was a moment that when I had interviewed you too, I had said, hey, I have a friend and he's kind of going through it and he was in this other program, but he says it's like not really working. And you were like, yeah, we're not like other programs. Like what? And so can you say like what the difference is with a lot of the other like equine type therapy programs out there versus you guys, where you're having this dramatic impact and these amazing results? Like, what do you think is the difference there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I never want that to sound like we're better than anyone. And one of my other initiatives is actually helping other equine programs with these extra things that we do so that they can also get the results that we get. But really it goes back to the curriculum that I've developed. I spent about 5 straight years in deep study of philosophy and personal development. And so I've learned these things that aren't, we call them the tools, and they're relatively simple. We say they're not easy, but they're simple concepts that we give you so that when you leave, you don't need us and you can start to manage. And it's all in the perception management. So a lot of times, and nothing against therapy, because we partner with a lot of therapists and a lot of therapists send us people that are stuck. Mm-hmm. But when you go to therapy, you tell your story, you tell your story, you tell your story. And so here we try to disrupt that story. And, I tell people like, I simply help people find the truth. That's all I do. And so our curriculum is really, it's nature-based. It's based on the 7 principles of nature, and it's very philosophical, but it empowers the person to take healing into their own hands. So I tell people when they come here, nobody can heal you. Mm-hmm. You have to heal yourself. That is the only thing. I spent 10 years trying to find somebody, a guru, a therapist, a doctor, somebody to heal me. And it wasn't until the moment I took it into my own hands that I actually healed. And I did, and I fully healed. And now I simply teach other people how to do what I did with the method that I use. And, we say it, I guarantee this program, I guarantee 100% guarantee will work if you work it. The caveat to that is not everybody's willing, ready, or open to doing the work. So, if you get out of it what you put into it, but I've never seen it not work for someone that works it ever.
Yeah.
So.
And you talk about having a purpose too, and people creating their own classes and showing other people, hey, this is what I do. And when I talked to the alumni who teaches the pen making class, when he was talking about just that therapeutic process that he goes through when he, in his mind, when he's in the zone and he's just, doing what he likes to do. And you talked about veterans always wanting to help people as well and working on a project. Is there a way holistically that can really help get your mind right too, when you know that you have this set goal and you're working on this, or you're teaching people new things? Is that something that a lot of people tend to take away from the retreat?
Absolutely. Purpose is key. So on the last day, everybody gets to really create their mission and vision and purpose in life. And so it's actually quite scientific how being connected to a purpose works, because if you're experiencing challenges in life and you're not connected to a purpose, you tend to feel like things are happening to you. So, if you find yourself saying like, why is this always happening to me? Bad things are always happening to me. When you perceive things that way, it actually releases chemicals in your brain like cortisol and norepinephrine, and it's, very stressful, and it sends you down the rabbit hole. But when you're connected to a purpose and you experience a challenge in life, you can actually create we call it eustress, right? So if you think about a time in your life where you knew that you were going to have a challenge, but you knew that it was connected to a purpose, you're like, okay, I know this is in the military, we call it embracing the suck. So we know this is going to suck, but it's for the greater good and it's for a goal. And so when we're in a state of eustress versus distress, we can actually have positive stress, and it can release dopamine and serotonin in our brain. So it changes connected to a purpose changes our whole physiology, how we see the world, and how we manage our challenge. And, another one of the components of the things that we teach at H.O.O.V.E.S, we call the quality questions. So one of the guys I follow, Dr. John DeMartini, says the quality of your life is based on the questions that you ask. So if you want a better life, start asking better questions. And so our whole program is designed through these questions, these quality questions, so people can say, if they enter a challenge, like, how is this challenge serving me? What is this challenge forcing me to do that I'm not otherwise willing to do myself in support of my ultimate mission? And when you can start asking those questions, you no longer melt down. You no longer feel bad, stressed, depressed. You can see the divine order, that everything is actually showing up to push you into that person that you said you wanted to be, and to do that thing that you said you wanted to do.
Awesome. And so for people who want to start on this journey, who are still struggling right now, I know you said that your retreats for the rest of this year are booked, but how can they find out more about H.O.O.V.E.S for the future? Where can they find you on social media or on the web? How can they learn more?
Yeah, the best place to get information for what's going on at H.O.O.V.E.S is to go to our website, H.O.O.V.E.S.U.S, and sign up for our mailing list, our newsletter. You'll get all the updates. You can also we do a lot on Facebook. So that's primarily our social media platform is Facebook. We are on Instagram and Twitter. We're working on it. And TikTok. We're working on that too. We are on TikTok, so find us.
TikTok.
Yeah. We have lots of horse videos on our TikTok. So if you want to see our farm, you want to see the animals, our little mascot, Patriot, he's a miniature dwarf horse. He's about 80 pounds. And he's got
I would
some
do
TikTok.
Anything for Patriot. I have seen so many of your pictures of Patriot. Can you let's introduce Patriot really quick. Let's just talk about Patriot.
So Patriot is an anomaly in himself. He's such a unique and special horse, but he was born on Memorial Day in 2019. And when he was born, it was pretty apparent right away that something wasn't right. He had an enlarged tongue that was hanging outside of his mouth, and big eyes and a bulging forehead. And so I knew right away that something wasn't right. And the vet came out and said, yes, he has dwarfism. He was 6 pounds when he was born, which even for a miniature horse is very, very small. And, she wasn't hopeful. The vet wasn't hopeful. And he had a rough couple of days. He couldn't eat. He was very lethargic, and I was bottle feeding him. And, people were saying, just put him down. Like, he's not going to make it. And not only did he make it, but he went on to just completely thrive. I have all these videos of him running around and,
I love it.
Cooking. So he really proved everyone wrong. But then in November of 2020, he got really, really sick. And we're still not exactly sure what happened, but he became unable to walk. His whole body kind of contracted. They found some compression in his spine, and the ligaments in his legs contracted. And again, he was just faced with this challenge of life or death. And I was faced with this challenge of, do I keep him alive? Do I try to find a solution? So we went to the University of Michigan. I consulted with 4 or 5 different specialists, and we chose to give him another shot. And it was a long couple of months. He went through quite a recovery period. He was getting physical therapy and massage and electromagnetic treatment and steroid treatment. And he ended up getting some special shoes because he had some problems with his feet. And I think the feet problems are what created the rest of the problems. Mm-hmm. So, again, I got a lot of criticism for keeping him alive. But I just, I told him, I was like, buddy, if you want to go, give me a sign. And he just never gave me that sign. And so through these new shoes and these treatments, like, it all just started working, and he's back up. He's walking around happy as can be. He's actually been allowed for the past couple of weeks to just free roam the farm. Mm-hmm. So he's just out and about, walking around, visiting. But again, like, he overcame the odds, and I could have very easily just gave in and put him down. But one of the most special moments in his whole journey, and again, he's doing great now. He's thriving. He's not in any pain. He's walking around. He's up all day grazing. But there was a moment, I posted a video of him on social media of him walking, and it was a little rough. He was neurological, and someone got on there and really tore into me about being cruel for keeping him alive. And one of the ladies that comes out to the farm regularly commented, and she said, you know what? She said, look at all the veterans who have been injured and they're sick, and we don't give up on them. And do we know that they're suffering? Do we know they're in pain? Yes, but there's also light at the end of the tunnel. And that's where perseverance comes in. And so we persevered for Patriot, and he did make it through. And every day when I look at him, every morning when I go out and I walk in the barn and he whinnies at me, I'm like, wow, I almost ended your life. But, there was that support there. And what a metaphor for all the men and women that come here, and what an inspiration.
What a perfect mascot for your program.
He really is. He really is. So he's a cool dude. Plus, he's just like the cutest thing. He has a massive underbite, and his bottom teeth stick out. So it looks like he's always smiling.
Yes.
But we were able to celebrate his 2nd birthday on Memorial Day. And I got him a little party hat and a carrot cake. And some of the other farm animals wore party hats, and it was adorable. So, but he's doing well. And I think everyone that sees him, I have so many people that have sent me messages that have said, like, wow, I felt like maybe I didn't want to keep going, but I've been looking at Patriot's story, and he's such an inspiration to all of us. So.
Absolutely. And so one last thing, if there are veterans listening to this podcast or other first responders who are thinking about getting help or entering into a retreat like this, or want to learn more about holistic healing or healing through equine services and more about H.O.O.V.E.S in general, what advice would you have for them, or what would you say to them if they're really about to start looking for help?
Yeah. So if you're at a place right now where maybe you haven't looked for help, or maybe you're judging yourself, or you're fearful, please just know that, and I tell everybody that shows up here, like the hardest part of seeking help is showing up, is making the decision that you're going to show up and you're going to do something about your life, because you are the only one that can do something about your life. But we're here, and there's a lot of programs here that have the tools, and there's no shame in that. We tell everybody, and everybody that comes out here realizes that you cannot do it alone. I couldn't do it alone. Nobody that comes here can do it alone. And there's people that deeply care about you. There are people that have never met you that care deeply about you, and that are just waiting for you to show up. And if you're struggling and you listen to this and you feel like, wow, I think I'm ready to take that step, even if our retreats are full, please reach out. You never know what we can come up with. Or like I said, if we get someone that is just in desperate need for help, we can fit an 11th person in the retreat. So, we just want to help, and we want to make sure that everybody has access without barriers.
Amanda, thank you so much for everything you do. I was just fascinated the first time that I got to talk with you and interview you for a story back in Swanton. And even now, I'm so glad we could do this and introduce what H.O.O.V.E.S is to people all over who can listen to the show. So thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Rachel. I really appreciate you.